How is this even possible? What is that blasphemous thing? Doesn't it look just wrong? Well, perhaps. Then again, it might actually make some sense. Hey guys, Gongrongzong here. So the Magha have just been announced to be the first allied race for the Horde in BFA. You may have thought for years that this is as weird as it could get, but then with Battle for Azeroth comes along this. And I agree with you, it really does look skin-crawlingly odd. But hang on, as there's actually more than meets the eye to this class. And I'm going to try to not only share with you why the new allied race of Magha Orcs actually makes sense as priests, but also why being a holy spec Magha priest might just make as much or perhaps even more sense than being a shadow one. Also, make sure you watch till the end, as we're going to go through a bonus point that might just blow your mind, or at least make you question your existence, or make you unsubscribe to my channel. No, please don't do that. Number 1. The Shadowmoon clan detest void magic. Now, in order to understand why Magha Orcs can even be priests in the first place, we must first understand one of their clans, the Shadowmoon clan. The Shadowmoon clan was one of the major Magha clans in Draenor. While all Orcish clans are very shamanistic in nature, the Shadowmoon clan was the most spiritual by far. They were the first ones to dedicate themselves to the elements, and are revered by all the other Orcish clans as being the highly spiritual trusted leaders of the Magha. They were recognized for being peaceful and diplomatic, often being the ones to mediate disputes between the clans. However, about 200 years before the very first war with the humans, an event known as the Dark Star occurred. The Draenei ship, known as the Genadar, crash-landed on Draenor, which is how the Draenor originally came to be on Draenor. However, in the process of the crash, a Naru that was within the Genadar, known as Kara, fell to the powers of the void and transformed into a fallen Naru. The Shadowmoon clan would later discover this fallen Naru, and without understanding it fully, began worshipping it as a deity. However, in doing so, they started to tap into the powers of the void. Many of them grew in power, but they also succumbed to madness, constantly hearing voices in their heads, very characteristic of old god and void lord stuff. The chieftains of the clan came to the decision to forever ban the Shadowmoon Orcs from coming into contact with the fallen Naru again, declaring it to be evil and dangerous, and henceforth exiling any who continued to tap into its power. However, centuries later, with the introduction of Garrosh and the Iron Horde declaring war on Azeroth, Grom Hellscream, war chief of the Magha Orcs, ordered Nazul, chieftain of the Shadowmoon Orcs, to contribute to the war effort. The Shadowmoon Orcs were peaceful by nature and were not militaristic by any means. In spite of this, they were pressured to provide a suitable form of power for the Iron Horde, failing which, Grom Hellscream would wipe out their entire clan. With the fate of his clan on the line, Nazul would break the sacred ancient laws of his ancestors and tap into the dark powers of the fallen Naru yet again, granting his people mastery over the void. This is clear evidence why our new Horde allied race Orcs can technically be Shadow Priests. They have done so in the distant past and in recent memory, and have been shown to be more than capable of wielding its power. However, and this is where the contention comes in, as it is assumed that with the ending of the war, the Shadowmoon clan no longer had any pressure to tap into the void, and thus went back to their traditional peaceful ways. This is even more probable considering the faction of Shadowmoon Magha that we interact with on Draenor, known as the Shadowmoon Exiles, that is led by Rolkan, Nazul's mate, still stand by the old laws that prohibit the use of shadow magic. It makes perfect sense that these Shadowmoon Exiles are the ones that will join us as part of the Magha allied race, as they have already aided our efforts in Draenor. Or perhaps that Rolkan takes over the entire Shadowmoon leadership with the demise of her mate Nazul. Thus, while Magha Orcs, namely the Shadowmoon ones, can be Shadow Priests, they never had any intention to wield it, and only did so when forced under death threats. To make this case even stronger, the fallen Naru Kara has been shown to be purified by Velen, cutting off the Shadowmoon's main source of their void powers. For a culture that has loathed the use of void magic for centuries and also been cut off from its very source, it seems unlikely to me that there should be any void-wielding Shadowmoon clan members left, besides perhaps a rebellious few. That does not explain yet, however, why Magha Holy Priest could even be an option, and even more so why I'm of the stance that they are perhaps more plausible than Shadow ones. So this brings us straight to our next point. Number 2. The light can be channeled by the Magha in their own unique way that fits in with their culture. Now, in order to understand how the Magha might even be able to channel the light, we must first understand what the light is. The light is one of two fundamental forces in the world of Warcraft, with the other being its counterpart, the void. Neither is considered good or evil. Each force simply has its own agenda and its own methods of achieving its goals. Users of the light are able to tap into its power in various ways. One of them would be through a personal belief system or a system of faith, as you can see in the Church of the Holy Light. Human paladins and priests harness the light through sheer willpower and faith, rather than an actual physical entity that they can see or touch. On the other hand, the Blood Elves are able to channel the light by drawing on the presence of the Sunwell, an actual physical entity. Following Velen's sanctification of the Sunwell after its corruption, the Sunwell has become a beacon of pure arcane and holy energy, granting the Blood Elves mastery over the light. Yet another example would be the Draenei, who tap into the powers of the light primarily through living sentient beings known as the Naru. As we have just seen, the Magha Shadowmoon Orcs were able to do the opposite in a similar fashion, tapping into the powers of the void through a fallen Naru. Therefore, if the light can be harnessed in different ways, it makes a lot of sense that the now redeemed Shadowmoon clan might be open to tapping into the forces of the now cleansed Naru, Kara. This can be reinforced with several points. Firstly, as we've already seen, the Shadowmoon clan are a peaceful and diplomatic clan. They are not warlike by nature and would prefer diplomacy and restoration over conflict. These traits fall in very nicely with the characteristics that the light represents. The light is often said to bring about feelings of positive emotion, hope, courage, comfort, coming from the heart. If anything, the light would only help to enhance their roles as peacekeepers. Secondly, the Magha Orcs now have an amicable relationship with the Draenei, as can be seen in how they allied together to take down the Fel Orcs and Archimon, and in Riel's dialogue. It is not so far-fetched to assume that Riel and the Draenei, being a race highly steeped in the powers of the light, would be open to sharing their way of life with those that were keen. And the Shadowmoon Orcs, being peaceful and spiritual by nature, would be the prime candidates for this. I'm not insinuating that the Draenei are going to teach the Magha about the light, but I'm just saying it's definitely a logical possibility at the conclusion of the war. Thirdly, the Shadowmoon Orcs already have experience in tapping into the powers of a Naru. This time around, they are doing the same yet opposite thing, but now from a good perspective that aligns with their clan philosophy. Thus, this new allied race of Magha Orcs can potentially form an entire new culture around the way they perceive the light to be, just as how the Tauren Sunwalkers did with Anshe, or how the Zandalari prelates did with their wild gods. Every interpretation and method of channeling the light is different, and so the Shadowmoon clan can definitely do so with the redeemed Naru or any other source of light for that matter. Taking into account of how they despise the void and now have a ready source of light to tap into, and also how they might be searching for plausible ways to redeem themselves in the eyes of their own clan, Magha Holy Priests start to make much more sense than Shadow ones. 3. Magha priests are priests by class, not by organization. Lore reasons aside, it still is very much of a visual challenge for us to accept Magha Holy Priests. It just seems so weird. However, let me propose a different perspective. Perhaps the reason why such an image makes us feel uncomfortable is not so much to do with priests as a class as opposed to us perceiving them as an organization. Let me explain. When we think of priests, The very first imagery that comes into our mind are churches. This is understandable due to the prominence of the Church of the Holy Light in the Warcraft universe and of our own natural interpretation of what a priest is in real life. However, how we can change our perspective would be to firstly recognize that the Church of the Holy Light is but one interpretation of the priest class. In other words, they are only one segment of priests and do not represent all of them. Not all priests need to be adorning bright white and yellow robes with angelic wings sticking out of them. Not all priests need to be archbishops that are methodical and preachy. Troll priests, for example, have their own structures in which they worship the light, drawing upon lower spirits and voodoo magic rather than spiritual faith. It would be downright unorthodox to see a troll priest dressed in the garb of a human bishop, and rightly so. Tauren priests also very much retain their nomadic and outdoor culture, worshipping the light through Anshe. They do not keep themselves within a giant cathedral of stone and wood, and neither do they adorn the stereotypical robes of a human priest. Therefore, Mag'har Holy Priests are just like any other priest race in WoW that is able to create its own unique interpretation of the light, and visually represent themselves in their own special ways. I played around with the dressing room a bit and came up with some amazing examples of priest gear that fits very well with Mag'har orcs. First up, we have a set that I really like, the Priest Tier 20 set from LFR Tomb of Sargeras. This set looks really nice. Its brown colour fits in perfectly with the brown colour of the Mag'har orcs. The shoulder pads of Lady Justice also stand out really prominently on a Mag'har male. This set doesn't reek of holiness, and yet is still able to showcase that there is something very friar-like about the orc. Next, we have the Tier 19 set from Normal Nighthold. This set is really unique, as on all other races it would just look bland and normal, but on a Mag'har it does a great job of showcasing the cultural garb of a Shadowmoon orc. It uses similar shades of purple and also has nice blue gems to signify something magical and mystical about it. Definitely fits the look of a Shadowmoon clan elder. We also have this amazing set that drops from Mythic Blackrock Foundry. The Ravenhead shoulders really stand out on the huge shoulders of a Mag'har male, and the veil just seems to give it a sort of really dark side necromancer sort of look. This set would really fit in very well with a Shadow Spec Mag'har priest, and yet, somehow, I can still imagine it casting holy spells in its own perverse, twisted way. There's also this set that drops from the Trial of the Crusader raid. This set looks absolutely fantastic, and the helmet reminds me very much of Alarak in StarCraft 2 if you've played it before. Really badass, sinister and evil looking. And yet, the tinges of gold allow you to imagine that this guy is not just full on shadow, but also has some holy spells in his arsenal. Plus, it has a big horde symbol on the belt, which is great for representing the faction. Lastly, we have this from Mythic Hellfire Citadel. This set just looks wicked with those corrupt claw tendril things sticking out and looking even more prominent on the broad shoulders of a Mag'har orc. The visuals just cry out Shadow Priest, and yet it has a couple of nice streaks of gold and yellow, signifying that there are still some aspects of the light in it. Fantastic for someone perhaps of the discipline spec that wants a nice merge of both the light and shadow. So those are the 5 sets that I found that would look great on Mag'har Orc Priests. None of them are too over the top holy or church-like, and yet still manage to visually embrace both the shadow and holy side of what the priest class represents. Hopefully they are helpful for your transmog ideas. And now for the crazy bonus point. Mag'har Paladins. Now, I'm in no way pushing forth for Mag'har to be an allied race of Paladins, and it's also been confirmed that they are not going to happen. But I would just like to share my findings with you guys for a bit of fun theory crafting, as they do actually seem to make a lot of sense. Many Paladins came to be by making the natural transition from priests to Paladins. In a very simplified way of putting it, Paladins are priests that decide to don heavy armor and pit themselves into the heat of melee combat. The most common example of this would be the famous Knights of the Silver Hand, who originated from the Church of the Holy Light, recruiting knights into their order. An unorthodox example of this would be the Night Elf Paladin NPCs that we see in-game, one of them being Dallas Moonfang, who made the transition from a priestess of the moon into a paladin. The Magha fit this concept perfectly, as the orcs are no strangers to donning heavy plate armor. Throwing themselves into the thick of combat is also very typical of orcish culture, with the vast majority of orcs being raised as warriors. Therefore, Magha that have been exposed to the light can make the easy transition of combining their traditional warlike characteristics with their skills in wielding the light, technically becoming paladins or warriors of the light. Secondly, the concept of honor is very important to paladins. This characteristic is exemplified perfectly in Tyrion Fordring, one of Warcraft's most iconic paladins. Tyrion valued honor above all else. During his encounters with the Orc Etric, he refused to abandon his side, honoring the aid that the Orc once granted him. This caused him to be declared a traitor by his own people for helping an Orc, and he was stripped of his rank and status in the Order of the Silver Hand. However, the powers of the light that he wielded could not be removed from him, as the powers of the light cannot be forcibly stripped from a paladin that conducts himself in an honorable manner. But I cannot disavow the oath I took. To do so would be to betray everything I am and everything we, as honorable men, hold dear. Similarly, Magha orcs uphold the values of honor above all else. While it is true that there can be many different interpretations of honor, and that alternate universe Grom Hellscream hasn't really done a very good job of upholding honor in his mass genocides, the concept of honor does at least share fundamental similarities across different races and cultures. For example, we know from Varrock Southfang that it is of the utmost importance to honor your enemy in combat. Honor, young heroes, no matter how dire the battle. Never forsake him. We can also see from their traditional practice of the famous Mak'gora, in which two leaders duel each other, that the rules of combat must be adhered to. Betrayal and deceit will not be tolerated. So in terms of the culture of a paladin, a staunch, honorable figure that subscribes heavily to the discipline of a military lifestyle and that upholds a strict code of conduct, the Magha orcs would actually feel pretty comfortable within their ranks. They have always been a race of soldiers and warriors. They have always had strict traditional values that they hold dear to, and they are no strangers to wearing the heaviest of plate armor and charging straight into the heat of battle. Again, I am of the viewpoint that this is probably way too much of a stretch, and that it really tests the limits of what we are comfortable with. In no other fantasy setting, Dungeons and Dragons, Lord of the Rings, Baldur's Gate, at least that I know of, is there anything even close to a visual depiction of an orcish paladin. But nonetheless, it's just hard to deny that they do possess the traits to be pretty effective paladins. And that's a wrap! Remember to hit that subscribe button if you'd like to enjoy more of such videos about the allied races coming up. Before I go though, I just wanted to let you guys know that I'm going to be starting a Discord group. I'm quite excited for it. I'll leave the link in the description below. I never thought anyone would be interested, but I received quite a few requests for it in the comments, which is great. I'll keep it open and public for now, so you guys can just hop in if you want to ask me any questions, or read about news that I post there, or ask about my opinion about stuff, or anything at all. And it'd be a great way to finally be able to interact with you on a more personal level too. And lastly, I know that this has nothing to do with the video, but I just wanted to give a small shout out to someone that recently posted a comment. His name is Sci-Fi Hero Comics and Movies. He mentioned that he's going through some chronic pain for the last 10 years, and he can't really play WoW much because of it, but still very much loves the game. I doubt he'll ever see this, and I doubt anything I could say would really help, but if you're watching this sci-fi, don't let the pain define you or who you are. You're an amazing person, and I know you go on to do great things in your life, with pain or otherwise. And I believe that you have the strength within you to overcome it. I do. and I really hope you can come back to WoW someday, and even if you don't, feel free to contact me or hook me up anytime. If any of you are watching at this point, perhaps you could leave a reply on his comment too. Just hit to the 8 Things BFA video, and if you sort the comments by newest first, his should be one of the top ones. Perhaps you could just leave an encouraging word or a little something to boost him up. A few small words from a stranger can help much more than we think. And that's all I got. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in Azeroth. A very big thank you to my first few Patreons. Really, thank you so much for placing your faith in me. I'm gonna thank you individually because there's just a few of you and because I want to. Andrew, thank you very much for being my very first Patreon. Your handwritten letter should be on its way, it's flying somewhere in the air. Tegan, Bruce, Carolyn, and Ghana, thank you so much for being such passionate pandas. I'll be posting some new posts soon to get your input about the creative process behind the videos. Owlrific and David, giant thank you from me, and here are your names displayed big and prominently for all to see for all eternity. And this guy, who's been MIA on me after the very first message. The wall behind me is still reserved for your character's picture, so get back to me when you can. Thank you very, very much.